All right, Jeff, I won't take up any more of Mariano's time because I know we're all here to hear Mariano rather than us talking about our prostate.
But I couldn't help but listen to your conversation. So, one comment is that I completely agree with your comment, Hannah. The more people, the better. The more interaction, I think, the better, because I think the way to learn is just to put what you think out and then talk about it. And then some people that are probably a little bit more shy and not willing to say what they think, they benefit from others putting out those ideas. So, and the more colors there are, makes sense, the more ideas there are, wrong or right, doesn't matter. Then the better it goes. So, yeah, so if you have students around, and then, of course, everyone is more than welcome to not only listen, but to be actively participating.
And Mariano's just finished up at the uni, so he's got a student deficit. So you could fill that gap for him.
I really enjoyed this interaction. I think that's the same way I felt anytime I taught, is we both benefit. Yeah, and I can find my side of the deal, and I enjoy it. So I think we both benefit. But I'm very much liking. I think there is a lot of freedom in this type of interaction, and a lot less expectations. Makes sense compared to the formal education at the uni could be. So I'm really enjoying this even more. Makes sense, because it gives us all freedom. Like, you don't need to be there. Makes sense. No one is going to send you an email saying you were late to the rounds or whatever. Makes sense. And then for me, also gives you a lot of freedom to just go wherever it goes. Makes sense. So I think that I enjoy a lot more than the formal thing.
Yeah, that's,
anyway, so
yeah, I find that even when I've made a comment that you very diplomatically tell me I'm wrong, I learn more from that, and from the same from others. I've learned more from those than just listening to what's going on.
Well, but that's always the case. And then more than diplomatic, the way that I see happening in an interaction like this type is everyone is not only welcome, but encouraged to disagree, as long as you can justify. Makes sense? Because if you can justify or say, well, that part I disagree, and you can justify that, then that, instead of me disagreeing and then you shutting up and saying, well, I don't know why I'm wrong, then that can trigger a very nice discussion where now you are happily wrong. Makes sense? Now you turn that into being happily wrong and making that into a learning opportunity. So yeah, that I suppose is the spirit of the rounds, and I'm more than happy that is coming through. So first case for today, this is the history. Oh, and I will read the history, and then in a minute I will share the link just in case. You will have it here on the web, but this is a relatively young animal vomiting. Can you all see my screen? I suppose so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Vomiting and diarrhea. There may be a foreign body involved. Okay. And so take a look at the images, and I will in a second share also the link. So we can all go chat. So if you can have the opportunity to get, I think I copied the wrong link. Let me go like that. This should be the link. So if you click there, you should be able to open the images. So you can both look at my screen where we interact and we draw and everything, but also if you want to manipulate the images, go back and forth, change the windowing, then you can do that on your own computer. So we repeat the same procedure. I take my same notes and we bring everything out, everything you think, normal, abnormal, things that you don't like, everything out. We go wild now, not shy. And then we filter out all the findings, okay? I'm glad that we have Paul. He seems to be very comfortable. I hope he's ready to disagree.
I'm going to start with abnormal.
That's very good first step. And as we already went through this, where I brought a case where the normal abnormal was, do you remember that case? There was a French bulldog, I think, and then there was coughing. And going through that first question was extremely difficult. So very good first step. You look at it, there's something wrong there. That's excellent.
Too much gas.
Okay, too much gas. That's perfectly fine. Usually, I make comments as we go. So usually the black or white situation is an easy way to go, and gas in particular, more in the abdomen, because it really contrasts very well. So it's kind of something easy to pick up. So I agree, too much gas, too much black. So it's abnormal, too much gas.
Looks like there's potentially two populations of gas as well, and some stacking maybe. Okay,
do you mind showing that?
Yeah, let me just figure out how to do that again.
You go to the tools. Sometimes they are a bit difficult.
Oh, yeah, got it. Here we go. So the two populations of gas. So like these kind of thinner ones.
Okay.
And then more like a different population, I think, here, which potentially could be colon, but I'm not sure if it's a separate small intestinal loop. On the lateral as well, this kind of stacking pattern here as well makes me think it's less likely to be colon, but and also over here, I figure it's probably the same loops, but could be colon, just kind of in a strange placement.
Cool. I'm gonna come back and kind of point to what I believe. I think you have something else in mind, but there is one point of what you said that seems to me a little bit of a contradiction. And is the first part of your statement, which is there are two populations of gas. So basically they are both gas filled. In which way they are different? Because based on what you are saying.
Oh, sorry, thickness in how dilated they are.
Very good, very good. So that is the most important thing, more than the content. So you can even find a distended fluid filled loop, a non-distended fluid filled loop, or makes sense the combination of content. The key element here is not so much the content, but the diameter. Okay, so it's always easier to identify more in a dog like this, which is pretty thin. How do I know? Well, I come here, falciform fat, not a lot of it, not a lot of fat in the subcutis. It's a pretty thin. You see this undulating contour of the skin. So this is a thin animal. So we are already dealing with a situation that we already know is going to be less contrast in that abdomen. So identifying fluid-filled loops is going to be harder. Gas-filled loops, they just come up and you can just see them easy. So you're doing the right thing. Go first with the easy. But the point that I want to make is not so much the content, is that you identify two populations in terms of diameter. So then you went through a bit and in the right direction because you were trying to identify and make sure that you were not identifying colon and pointing to something that is not actually small bowel, but actually colon, and assuming that that is distended. So good exercise. Now we keep on receiving comments. I like your comment about the stacking, and I like what you found here. Like, based on our knowledge about how the colon where is the anatomy of the colon, it would be extremely unusual for the colon to be able to go like this and get two parallel loops of colon like this. So that is the thinking behind using the idea of stacking. Colon usually doesn't result in stacking, small bowel does. So then that's a nice hint to say, this is distended and is likely small bowel. So that should be the thinking.
The thing that interests me really is that the fact that the descending colon and into the rectum almost is so distended, and that would be unusual unless there was a blockage. In this case, it'd be just about at the anus, but you can't see that on this X-ray.
Okay.
So
Good
that
point.
suggests to me that there's possibly a motility problem. If there's no blockage there, and we can't really see that.
I like your the underlying reasoning in terms of the tubing or plumbing situation, which is if you think that the colon is distended, therefore you need to put the obstruction all the way down. Makes sense because the flow goes in that direction. So I like that statement. The part that I probably not agree that much is that I don't see this too distended. Like and there is one rule that we never use, but I'm happy to share. So the diameter of the colon should be no more than 1.7, I think it's 1.7 or 1.5. These points, they are killing me, but probably no more than, let's say 1.5, I can double check that rule, of the length of L7. So if you go here, I don't know, it's giving me pixels probably because it was a JPEG, but it doesn't look like extremely distended. So I like your thinking. Probably I'm not so concerned about that distension. And probably there is another comment in terms of your comment about the ileus or the functional thing. I agree that that should be a consideration, but I think probably because we are finding two populations, now at least that should help us decide that we are not actually dealing with a generalized functional issue. Because in a generalized functional issue, now the example would be a very severe enteritis or volvulus, something like this. This volvulus clinically looks very different, but let's say a severe enteritis. Then we probably don't expect to find this normal looking bowel against a distended bowel. So that would be my thinking to your comments.
I find it interesting that on the lateral, there appears to be more gas than on the ventral dorsal. And I can't quite conceptualize why that is. If you could explain, is that something to do with superimposition or something like that, or?
Well, I think I see a lot. Probably you are missing these guys.
Oh yeah, okay.
So if you see these and then you see, I think these under the spine. Okay. By under the spine, let me share. And I'm sure she is not gonna get upset if I'm gonna mention her name and everything. When Jennifer Chow, one of my residents, was in the beginning of her residency, we will have these discussions, and then we will always say, you know, where is that thing that you see in one projection on the other projection? And she would always answer the same thing: hidden under the spine. Like, everything you don't see is gonna be under the spine.
Okay.
And I kind of forget that answer. Like, this is years ago, and every time I have the issue, I always laugh at myself and say it should be under the spine. So I think in this case, there is gas here, probably going there. These
okay.
Two. There is one point that probably is worth mentioning. There is one paper where they said, well, you know, this idea of using the two lateral projections, and we discussed about that in the thorax, but these guys were a bit concerned about the two projections in the abdomen. And basically the thing that we know, and the reason why we use the two projections, is the stomach, because there is, you know, the stomach goes from left to right, dorsoventral, so, and it usually has both fluid and gas. So you really benefit from having the two projections. Basically, in the left lateral projection, you are pushing or making gas go upper, so it's going to show you the pylorus very nicely. These guys went beyond that, and they said, okay, is there any difference if we start by a left lateral and then we move to a right lateral, or vice versa? And what they discover is this: if you start, let me make sure it's correct, I think right lateral, basically you put the pylorus on the dependent side, that image is usually going to have less gas in the small bowel compared to the opposite. And the underlying reasoning is that once you put the dog on left lateral recumbency, the gas that goes into the pylorus also goes into the small bowel. Make sense? So then there's going to be a difference in between, depending on the order, there's going to be a difference in the amount of gas in the small bowel, depending on which projection you've taken first. And I've seen it many times. So many times that becomes like a very clear thing. And then I check the timing of the acquisition, and it's because of that reason. Okay, I'm happy to try to bring the paper. I need to double check that what I'm saying is correct. I'm pretty sure it's correct. But you know, when you read the paper, you can forget something. But that's the only thing that I will bring. Probably, so the way that I would take it would be not only judge the small bowel, but judge the stomach. Makes sense? If the stomach, for example, looks smaller in this projection, probably some of that air went into the small bowel. But overall, I don't think the change in projection should change a lot the overall amount of gas, unless the animal is panting and swallowing air and something like that.
And then the only other thing that I saw was just here, this sort of.
Yeah. Is that?
Yeah.
I was watching that too. I couldn't work out whether it's just overlying
Yeah.
fluid-filled bowel or whether there's actually something there.
And I couldn't see it on the other projection as well, so it must be under the spine.
There's an interesting little teardrop shape just cordodorsal to the green line you've just, green shape you've just drawn, which I suspect is just overlying, but unusual shape.
So I have one. First, I want to know who drew that.
Which one?
Yep.
This one, the red. Because I think that person is trying to. There was a comment that you can see it here, and yes, it's very clear here. But then immediately someone drew that. So even if you don't want.
Sorry, that was me. Sorry, I'm having technical issues.
Cool. So Helen, is that because you think this is the same structure?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it is.
Cool, good. Now I invite you to keep on going forward with that, trying to figure out what's happening. Can you tell me what actually caught your attention? Why is that you are all picking on that? And you may not know, but I'm inviting you to reflect. You know,
it's like a golf tee shape on the lateral where the opacity is. There's like a golf tee shape around the back, which doesn't really kind of happen in nature. So like, I'll see if I can draw like this shape here, which sort of makes you more suspicious that it's something in the intestine rather than just overlying or, you know, just gas.
Yeah,
Gas bubble doesn't make that shape.
It kind of looks like it's going around it as opposed to like it overlying.
Yeah.
Very good. So that's the reason why I call your attention. I have two more directions that I want you to go. One is, can you guess what it may be? And you don't need to be right. This is a guessing exercise.
Soft tissue, something?
Okay, I like that. It's soft tissue.
It looks, to me, on the lateral, it looks like it's in the colon. So it could be feces, I guess, or it could be like a foreign body that's made it to the colon. But it might not be in the colon.
Cool. So that was my second point. First, can you guess what it could be? And then the second one is, where is it? So can we clear up all the lines? And then I'm going to ask you to, if you want, justify why do you think, which are the lines that you're using to conclude that that is in the colon?
Well, you can follow the colon from like the dorsal down from the anus, that gas-filled structure's colon coming from the anus. The little funny...
Can you draw that line so everyone sees what you are seeing?
So like down here, this looks like colon coming from the pelvis. This here, this is the weird thing that is just a bit odd that I don't really know what to make of that. And then, but you can kind of follow that line down there, and if you kind of relatively ignore that bit, you can follow it down there as well, and then it kind of reaches the thing.
Cool. So if you are right, and that is descending colon based on the connection with the rectum, then where is that on the eye projection?
Yeah.
Under the spine.
The transverse colon.
Under the spine. I think it's where Helen suggested, which I think is the same image here. Let me see. We have that. And then we have this.
Oh,
which,
yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Which now it kind of makes sense because we want the descending colon to be on the left. Makes sense? So it's not that we have like a super strong evidence, but we kind of keep on accumulating evidence that may be in the colon. So can we go back to thinking what it may be? Oh, I realize that I may have the power to clear all drawings. So
I feel like it might just be the effacement with the kidney there, and it's just so much gas. And then you see the kidney, and then it looks like there's something there, but maybe there's not.
Good point. The caudal contour of the kidney always looks a bit like that, and it's almost exactly in that position. So I can see how you can get that idea. Probably my way to think about this is this contour looks very clear, and the caudal contour of the kidney here doesn't look that clear. It's probably that line, and I guess probably because of my knowledge of what is happening, but hopefully you understand my reasoning. If this is the contour, which I think it is, and the reason why it's so less contrasty, there is less contrast in between what is outside the kidney and the kidney, is because probably this is in contact with gas. Makes sense, like in here. So that line is super sharp and super contrasting.
Yeah.
And that is because even more contrasted than any other contour in the abdomen, because probably any other contour in the abdomen is going to be soft tissue against fat. This one is soft tissue against gas. But I completely agree with you that is a bit confusing, is where the kidney is. But another argument would be, if that is the kidney, then we are still dealing with what is that, which that cannot be the kidney, it's too ventral.
Could that on the the lateral view, so that can't just be a loop of fluid filled bowel there?
This part.
Yeah.
The problem with that idea is that the contour in between a fluid field and gas field should not be like this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if the dog is laying on the side, then basically, and this is an interesting concept that we haven't talked about. Probably we are going to talk about it briefly, but then we will come back. If you have if you take a bottle of water, like a plastic one, and then the way that we take radiographs is like looking at that bottle. If you put it on side and you look from on top, basically you don't have a level line. Makes sense, because there's going to be a layer of gas on top and a layer of fluid on the bottom, and the direction of the X-ray is going first through the gas and then through the fluid. So then you will never get a level line. So we don't expect in animals, this is different from horses or people, because the animal, we are putting them on the side, then we don't expect to have level lines. There is a vertical beam, the object is laying on the side. If you want to see a level line, and this is probably very remarkable anytime we think about the esophagus, when there's a distended esophagus, there's usually both fluid and gas, and we don't see a level line for exactly the same reason. So we don't expect a level line, and then on top of that, if that would be a level line, it's kind of in the wrong, it's rounded, which level lines are usually straight. So that's an interesting, this thinking doesn't only apply here, applies anytime we want to distinguish mass or mass effect compared to fluid. Fluid usually doesn't take a shape unless it's contained. So if we talk about free fluid or fluid within the colon, usually it doesn't uptake a shape. Mass is usually then you can explain why they have a well-defined contour. So that would be a little bit of my explanation why I think that is unlikely to be fluid. I try to make my explanations long to show my thinking, okay? You can always come back and say, I disagree or I don't understand. So any more ideas what it could be? I'm gonna give you the answer and then you're gonna say, of course.
I don't really know if I'm completely off base, but could it be something like an interception in the colon?
Okay. So, yeah. How many of the others have, do you want to defend your position? Do you want to argue in favor? Because then probably we have Paul arguing against. So do you want like to tell us why is that you are thinking of like that?
Well, I guess just because you've got like the gas kind of going around the outside of it, and so it could be something coming up through. I don't think I'm right. I just threw out another answer.
It has a gas center. I'm wondering about a foreign body that's actually has a hole in the middle of it. But the other thing I'm just looking at is that does appear to be an inspiratory film. The diaphragm's reasonably well back, and yet the lungs are quite white, relatively.
Yeah, it may be technique. I'm usually, as a rule that I put to myself, is unless I see something that is very clear that I cannot, I mean, examples, pleural effusion, like a mass, I would try to stay away from bronchial or interstitial pattern, judging based on the periphery, because the technique for the abdomen, it may be just technique. It may not be the first time where the technique of the abdomen, you think there is something in the thorax, you take another radiograph of the thorax and it looks okay. So obviously you cannot hide from things that are obvious, but I would stay away from things like a bronchial pattern or interstitial pattern. I would.
No, it's not really bronchial.
Okay, so we don't have anyone arguing for any, or let's stay with that abnormality that you picked up. If we go to the end of what we think or what we want to argue, then I'll tell you. Otherwise, so speak up or I go through and I tell you what it is. Once I tell you what it is, it becomes like, oh, obvious. So it's good to...
Like you said a couple of weeks ago, like sometimes it's not about the specific things, it's just about the overall look, and it just looks obstructive. Like it's got sort of generalized dilated intestine, the stomach's gas filled when it's been vomiting, which is abnormal, like, and it's got poor serosal detail, but it is a thin dog, so don't know the relevance of that without an ultrasound. So it's just kind of got the overall look of an obstruction, a GI obstruction.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
Excellent point. So I was diving into that image, but you step back a bit and you say, well, Mariano, don't bother me anymore. I don't care. It's obstructed anyway. And perfectly fine reasoning. So you may not need the tools that we talked before about making the decision about is it obstructed or not. We have everything. So what we are doing now is an exercise, is a learning exercise, but I completely agree. You should not get stuck on there. Like for me, it would be more than okay to make that call. This is obstructed, period. Then I don't know. If you may want to know more, the owner may want to know more, the surgeon, if you want to go in, depending on the age, you may want to know more. But that point is clear. Makes sense? So 100%. I cannot agree more with that comment. Okay, so I'll, yeah.
On the interception idea, if you had an interception and you had contents within the interception, then would you get that sort of a pattern there that you see where you've got the increased opacity or not?
What do you mean by content?
Well, I'm just picturing like if you've got, contents within the bowel and you get an intersusception, and so it's sort of folding in within itself. Could it be that within the part that you have the within the lumen where it's intersuscepted, you have essentially gastrointestinal contents trapped, or not really?
Okay, good. This is exactly what's happening. So this is an intersusception. This is an ileocolic intersusception, and this is how it looks. And the classic appearance is that what we call bullet sign, and it's that. And then if you kind of connect that to the colon, and it's a young animal, and everything is very likely. Okay, it's in the location, the most common location, ileocolic, and then it's the perfect appearance, is rounded. So what I go is a bit to keep on talking about this. Let me bring what is happening. Oh, I need to go with mouse. Sorry, I had this ready and then, okay. So that is how an intersusception looks like. So this is, let's call it, in our example, this is aboral. Makes sense? This is where the colon, the descending colon, the caudal part, and this is more the oral part. So basically, this bowel loop came and went into the other, and then it folded upon itself, and then it came back, and then back. So what we are seeing is gas in the colon against this soft tissue, which is the four walls, makes sense, of the bowel that goes in. There's a name, it's intercipiens or intersusceptum. So the invagination of one portion, so this is called the intersusceptum. And then the other one is called intersuppient. You just forget that those numbers are not important. But what is happening is that soft tissue structure with that semicircular, well-defined contour is actually the bowel that is inside. In this case, it's going to be the ileum that is inside of the colon. And you may not be lucky to find that, but I just wanted to show you an example. We've been talking about foreign bodies. We went through concoves and then through linear foreign bodies. So this case is a nice case because it has everything of a mechanical obstruction. In addition to that thing that kind of catches your eyes, you kind of see it. And now that if you may be lucky and have another case like this, where you are going to be able to probably get to the two parts that is obstructed plus at least having a high degree of suspicion what it is. I'll show you, this is for fun, another case where, so how to go forward in a case like this. You may feel very, for example, I would feel very comfortable in a situation like this, just to know that there is an intersusception. But in some cases, you may benefit from doing a pneumocolon. Again, if you are not sure, if you can make the connection very nicely, most of the interceptions are in the colon. So probably I will not go upper GI, I will do a pneumocolon. If you have that as a highly likely. I just wanted to share one case where they haven't done that. They went orally, and then they gave positive contrast. It's a puppy. And then you see all the contrast going to the small bowel. And then this is the image that I love. So basically, this small bowel goes in. Makes sense? That's the lumen of the bowel that is within the other bowel. And that's why the lumen is narrowed. The reason why the lumen is narrowed is because there is some pressure. Makes sense? So the outer wall, the one that is containing all the others, cannot stretch that much. So then the lumen of the one that is inside is narrowed. So that's the reason why this is narrowed. And then it went through, and then it went back. So this is the image that we are seeing in our first radiograph. Now, instead of having positive contrast, we have gas. And then contrast goes here, in between the intercipiens and in the intersusception. So see, there are two. this is the lumen of one, and that's the lumen of the other, if you want. One is central, the other one is more peripheral. And then if you wait more, then you don't have any more contrast in the lumen. Now all the contrast is accumulating in the outer layer. Make sense? So just to show you, hopefully this, even if it's complicated to make your mind around it, it helps you, and I'm happy to share these notes, to understand what is happening and to then understand the image, the original image, what is actually happening there. Probably one comment before we finish with this case is all of these can be easily solved by having a probe and putting a probe on that wall. It's extremely easy. This is probably a similar remark compared to the linear foreign body. Like an interception and a linear foreign body are relatively easy, probably interception even more, to diagnose ultrasonographically. And probably they are not that easy to diagnose radiographically.
Mariano, on the lateral, why do you sort of, it almost looks like a ball, you know, like cranially you can see like this line here.
Oh.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that line is superimposition of this bowel. I don't think it belongs to here. I think
it makes you think it's a ball-shaped sort of object. It's confusing.
Absolutely. And now we come back to the grapes and the concept. That's a superimposition. Makes sense? It's one grape and another grape. And were they two, when the borders that superimpose can create an image that is not real. Makes sense? It's one and then another one. With the grapes, it was very easy to say this actually doesn't belong to a grape. This is two. But when you don't know the shape of things, then that superimposition can easily create images like that one. Makes sense? You take one contour of one thing, another contour of another thing, and your brain wants to make an image. And then the way out for any situation like this is to see if you can continue one of those lines out. Make sense? So let's now for a minute think, well, that's one line, and then I make it like that, and then probably I make it like that. So that would be the thinking. The way to make sure that you are not making the mistake of the superimposition and the summation, the creating a new structure that is not real, is can you make any of those lines go beyond? So then you get this line, and then that line can easily go out. Make sense? So now this line doesn't belong to this object, this line belongs to this object. Is that idea right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, it's like having the two grapes. So when in the middle, is that a real object or not? Well, if you can make one grape and then another grape, then what is in the middle is not actually real. This is sometimes easier said than actually done. Sometimes that's the theory. Sometimes it's not easy. I give you here another example, which is in my eyes a classic: skin folds. So someone can say, well, what do you think about that line? This one. Is that same to this? Can this be a foreign body that is in the bowel and then went out? And then my answer is going to be, well, I can follow that line out. So that is superimposed. That's a big concept. Makes sense? And it's the price that we pay to have a 3D object reduced to a 2D image. We are always going to deal with that anytime we look at a radiograph. And it comes in different shapes and structures and confusions. A similar confusion is always a big vessel superimposed over a rib. We make a nodule out of that, which is not real. But just another example. So probably we should finish with this one. Do you have any questions?
Oh, Mariano, I had one question. Is this area here, you can just see these faint lines. Is that just fluid-filled intestines that have very little, because there's no fat, we just can't differentiate them?
that would be exactly my explanation. And there's something similar going on here. Many lines. Maybe one of these is the spleen, it could be, but all these lines, I think all of those are the serosal contour of the small bowel, which is not that clear because it's a thin animal. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Can I just inquire about the teardrop shape that Jeff pointed out? I'm suspecting it's just superimposition or something, but just if you could clarify that.
Can you? Probably two things. Can you show me that teardrop thing that I? Okay, good. So is this? Okay. Okay, let's try to clarify that image. I think what is happening here is that this is wall against wall. So it's kind of a flexure of the wall of the colon. Makes sense? It's like
yeah, that makes sense.
Probably similar to what the linear foreign body makes sense. Is one wall against the other. It's kind of a folding of the wall.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
Probably the other thing is, could that be a polyp? Could that be? And yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Mariano.
How to know? If you are really concerned about that, I guess someone can even think, well, this is a polyp, the lumen is narrow, this is a foreign body waiting, and it cannot go through. I guess you can make that story. How to clear that? Probably, if you are really concerned about that option, I would distend the colon, however you can, fluid or like positive contrast or negative contrast. I would probably do a negative contrast. And if that is real, meaning if that is a polyp, then the more you distend the wall, the more clear you will see. If that is just a folding of the wall, the more you distend, the less you will see.
Right. Awesome.
All good? Good to go? So the other one was a case 9. Let me come back. So I'll share the link. No, the case number 10. And then I'll give you the history. Domestic, 6-year-old domestic short hair, vomiting for the last 3 days, not interested in food, past 1.5 days, had vomited hair balls in the past. Also, so they vomited like not only hair balls, but part of a toy. That's the history. Probably with this is likely the last one that we go into kind of the GI set. Makes sense? We've been through a lot. And probably it's time to move on. But I really like, and this is probably bringing another little bit of a lesson. So let's see. So one is right, the one is left. Lateral projection, and then we have this one, which is the VD. As usual, you can open the images from the link and manipulate them. And then, as usual, take a minute, and then we start the bombarding of findings. I like that today we have like radiology dogs looking at the screen as well.
Has this cat had any contrast?
No.
Okay.
So whenever you are ready to say something.
All right, well, I'm going to go for the most abnormal thing because it
Okay.
looks, I think it's going to be the easiest. This looks like a very odd shape.
Okay.
I think that's Pac-Man.
Yeah. Something non-natural.
It's something
Okay.
that contains gas too. Like the
Yeah.
history of eating something spongy or foamy.
Mm. That's all that I can see that's not normal too.
Yeah, I think this gas is in the colon because you can kind of follow it sort of down there. And I think that's it there as well. The same. In there. So I think that's colon. So I think that original thing's the most abnormal.
I think
yeah, I'm listening.
The small intestine doesn't look, it's not an obstructive pattern.
No.
Dilated or fluid filled, particularly gassy. But it's not a normal pattern either. It's just doesn't look like it's obstructing fluid and gas passage through the bowel.
Perfect. I was hoping for those to be your findings, to be honest. So I'm very happy that it worked out. Anything else?
The width of what could well be fat there interests me because there's a lot. Whereas when you look at here, there's not much fat there at all, and there's a bit of an incongruity there.
Excellent. So let me come back. Beautiful. So do you see these? This one is not that good. Probably I should do it again. You get my idea. Do you see these two lines?
Mm-hmm.
And do you see that this is less opaque and this is more opaque?
Yep.
We can see the kidneys. We can still see everything. But there are those lines. Do you know what they are? Because they are in every cut. And they are a source of confusion. Probably you never see it until one day that you see them, and then it's very confusing.
It's isn't it intra-abdominal fat, and it like
this part.
Yeah.
But there is also intra-abdominal fat because we can see the contour of the kidney, and because we can see probably the contour of the colon. Make sense?
Yeah.
That's telling us that there is still intra-abdominal fat, but for some reason we have that line.
Is it the fat cat or the?
Is it the rectus?
That's the colon. Okay, I let you suffer enough, and I tell you, and I'm gonna save a silly mistake. Those are the sublumbar muscles. Always very prominent in cats. Always is all of these, but on the side. So always there, always there, always there. From now on, pay attention. Don't get confused by that. That's okay. So because they are thick and because they are soft tissue, they are superimposing. Again, a superimposition. They are not silhouetting. Makes sense? They are not in contact with anything, but they are superimposition. They are creating that increased opacity. So that's how it looks. So we clear that up. And forever, makes sense? That is gonna be always there. Don't get confused with that. Okay, and no more findings. So I have then my thing is gonna be, what are we gonna do? Because the animal is vomiting, or how are we gonna explain this situation? Because we have something that looks like a foreign body, and I completely agree. It's the shape, it's the opacity, it's the sharp contours. Probably we need to make a call about where is the most likely to be located? Is it in the colon? Is it in the small bowel? And then the other thing that is odd is that our theory or our rule is not really working, because we have the foreign body, but then we don't have the distension. So there is kind of an issue here. How are we gonna read this? What's our interpretation? What are we gonna do next? Makes sense, because we like to have the foreign body, and actually we like to have the distension. The foreign body is like a luxury situation. Now it's the opposite. Now we have something that looks like a foreign body, but we don't have the obstruction. So how can we explain these two findings?
I once had a dog with a foreign body that was a calf feeding teat, of course, which was perforate. So it didn't have an obstructive pattern at all.
Good. So,
interesting.
But it was palpable, and on
so
that
then
basis I went in on it.
So it was a partially obstructive, or they allow content to go through the foreign body. Beautiful. That is an option that we always need to have in mind. And that's one of the reasons why I brought this case. So it's to come back to our rule, but to criticize the rule. The rule goes, we rely on this distension. One situation where this rule is not gonna work, and we need to be aware of it, is if the foreign body is not actually completely obstructing, and then allows some of the content to go through. A nice example is a bone, the cross-section of a bone, that is hollow and allows content to go through. The foreign body is still there, it's producing probably necrosis of the wall, but you don't see the distension. Makes sense? So that, or another one would be a fragment of a bone that, again, because it's a fragment, it may be even sharp and even lacerating the small intestine, but it may not result in obstruction. So that's one of the important situations. What about any other explanation to deal with this, let's say, contradiction or not really?
It could be it's just working its way through, like it's just moving and it's not causing obstruction. It's just like it's gradually working its way through, basically.
Good.
Yeah, and it's vomiting from something else.
Okay, or I put those three things together, or actually it could be if there is a lot of vomiting, then it's possibly that if it's a very high obstruction and the animal is vomiting a lot, and we just took the radiograph immediately after vomiting, then we've lost our distension. Make sense? So I just wanted to come this to say, well, this is the rule, it works most of the time. Be aware of the limitations. So let me show you. This was a real case, like all of them, but real case in terms that I was involved. And then I suggested those options. All of this could be going on. Why don't you take a follow-up in, I don't know, whatever, I don't remember, 8 hours. Look how it looked after 8 hours. So now we got what we wanted. We got abnormal bowel loops. We got a very distended stomach. Probably we can bring this one as well. Look at that stomach. So cats usually don't get that stomach unless they are obstructed. That's big. That's going way caudal to the rib cage. And most of the small bowel is okay. So I anticipate that this is a very high obstruction, or relatively upper. There's not a lot of, it didn't go through a lot of the small bowel. And now we waited a little bit, and now there are clear signs of obstruction. Okay, so this is to show you a case, kind of a little bit. I liked it because it was the opposite. In the first radiographs, you could see the foreign body without the mechanical or the evidence of obstruction. And then you need to wait a little bit for that to show up. And to always be aware that it could be a partial, it could be a very high obstruction, or it could be after vomiting. You always remember that, and don't be extremely categorical about this cannot be. So there could be the situation where you have a normal looking abdomen and there's still something going on. So in those situations, really, not clinically, that's for the clinician, but radiographically, I always suggest take another follow-up. You know, things may show up nicer in 12 hours. Okay.
Cool. Good
I
case.
think we are done with this, and I suppose we are gonna. There are already a couple of very interesting cases. They are all around the thorax and the lung and the prostate. But they happen through these last 2-3 weeks that they are waiting for us. So probably we are gonna stop with the abdomen with this. Hopefully, we went through many things. We went through foreign bodies, the clear rules, and situations where we break the rule, legal foreign bodies, interception. So a little bit of everything, and we kind of use the rules and the features in many different cases. Hopefully, next time you have a vomiting dog and you take radiographs, you feel a bit more confident in reading the radiographs. And I suppose we move to the thorax. Unless something cool, a new cool case comes and brings us back to the abdomen. It's not that we move forever, but probably we are gonna take the topic of the thorax for the next 1 or 2 rounds. And as always, we are always happy to interrupt these kind of topics if you have an interesting case. Those are the best, and you need to be brave, but brave sharing your mistake. Makes sense? Sharing that you thought something and ended up being something different. And if you can share that with a group, then you're gonna be, people can learn from your mistake, which is awesome.
So true. That's what Jeff said earlier. If you make a mistake, you learn so much more from it. You remember it forevermore.
Yeah, and then one interesting thing, like I work for a teleradiology company, and the big guy there, he, as a policy that he self-imposed to himself, you know, it's not a written policy. He does that. Anytime he makes a mistake, he sends an email to the whole company, all the radiologists, saying this is the mistake that I made. I love that. What's the value of that? What is that? I probably can learn from his mistake. You know, that's one thing, which is extremely valuable. But I think the most important is to take mistakes, make yourself friends from the mistakes. They are part of life. It will happen. So why are we going to hide them? You know, it happened. That's it. So now, what's the best we can do with them? Share, make sure that no one else makes a mistake, reflect on them. Makes sense? So next time, I've already tried to explain to myself what happened. And that is exactly what he does. So making a mistake in that company is part of the game. We all understand each other. We all like to share and take advantage of that. And then we all try to, he always tries to explain what he thinks went wrong. Make sense? He tries to say, I think in this case, I made a mistake because of this reason. So learning. So don't run away from the mistakes. Just, it's upsetting. We don't like it. But once you go through that upsetting time, turn it around and use it. So I more than encourage you to bring things that you made mistakes or that you don't understand. I mean, the easy things, I bring the cool teaching cases. You bring the difficult ones, you know, the ones that are, I don't know, I made a mistake, and then we try to learn from them.
All right, I might wind it up there. We've done our hour with Mariano this morning. Thanks everybody for coming. I'll be talking about anemia on Friday if anybody's interested, and I am shuffling the time from lunchtime forward to the morning at 8 a.m. I'll send out an invitation, and if anybody logged on a little bit late, we were talking earlier about when we send out invitations. I'll try and send them out a little bit more warning going forward. So speak to everybody soon. Thanks, Mariano.
Thank you very much.
See you next week.